Alright, y'all, so today in this video, I want to talk about a really fascinating and interesting canceled spin-off show that would have been a big spin-off from the TV series Smallville that would have focused on Oliver Queen's united group of heroes, or I guess you can consider them this show's version of the Justice League. Now, there's actually a lot that was actually going to be in this show. We actually got a few bits of information over the years, and it seemed like out of all the efforts to make spin-offs from Smallville, this seemed like the one that at least had the most potential and the most work put into it to actually get off the ground. But unfortunately, got canceled. So yeah, I want to talk about the sort of really interesting story in the canceled spin-off TV show from Smallville that would have focused on Oliver Queen's Justice League. So regardless, let's get into it. Now, like all my other canceled videos, I'm going to give you a little bit of a background, all the known content that this spin-off series might have contained, why it was canceled, and my overall opinions on this spin-off show. So regardless, let's get into it. So where does the story of this possible spin-off show really begin? Well, many of the characters that were introduced and set up in Smallville were, like I said, initially the idea was to kind of create backdoor pilots for them. The Impulse, aka Kid Flash, was introduced in Season 4. Cyborg was eventually introduced to the team, and Aquaman, and eventually Oliver Queen as Green Arrow was introduced in Season 6. And the idea was to kind of create this sort of prototype version of the Justice League. And it was all really interesting stuff, and it culminated in one of the best episodes in the series, and I believe one of the highest rated ones in CW's history, Justice, which was one of the more popular episodes from Season 6 of Smallville. Now, years later, after the show ended, one of the producers, directors, and writers of a few of the episodes in Season 6 of Smallville, Stephen DeKnight, excuse me, who you may recognize from credits as the showrunner of the first season of Daredevil, and he was also involved with the show Spartacus. Years later, in 2016, on his Twitter, started making references and talked about the fact that there was a canceled Justice League spinoff show that they were thinking about doing for Smallville. And he would also kind of elaborate in an official companion book for Season 6 of Smallville, to kind of give a bunch of quotes about this proposed series and what he was thinking about doing with it. And to say the least, a lot of it is really interesting. So let's get into it. I'm going to kind of talk about a bunch of these quotes and just kind of read them off and give you my thoughts as we go along. But he kind of starts out with many of the quotes saying, "There was a couple of different plans that never quite came to fruition. At one point, we were planning a spinoff we were starting to put together. The concept was, it was basically going to be Green Arrow, Cyborg, Flash, and a couple of other DC characters living in Metropolis." So this is kind of the general synopsis and the idea that he was going with for this Justice League spinoff of Smallville and its own TV show. He kind of continues to elaborate. "The idea was that Oliver Queen was basically giving refuge to young people with superpowers, kind of in a Professor X kind of way, putting together this team and also trying to help out these people, like he says in Justice, about how he helped out Victor Stone and Bart and Arthur Curry." So that's kind of the loose concept of this series. Basically, it would have had Cyborg, Flash, Green Arrow, and other DC characters, and Green Arrow was kind of going to be the Professor X, the leader of this team, kind of the leader of this sort of early version of the Justice League, and it was going to be kind of like an X-Men kind of vibes here. I can definitely sense where he was going to provide refuge, possibly train future DC superheroes that would eventually grow to be part of the bigger DC universe. And I'm assuming, of course, Aquaman may have been a major character in this. And I mean, who knows at this point with other characters, but that's really cool. Sounds like he kind of sounds a lot like in concept like the X-Men, but nonetheless, pretty cool stuff. Now, he also kind of further elaborates more about, specific plot details that he was thinking about doing, and, let's get into that. So the Justice League spin-off series that was going to be spun off from Smallville was actually going to tie into Smallville's season 6 finale. Stephen DeKnight kind of further elaborated in some quotes. The idea with that was that Green Arrow was going to appear towards the end and help Clark with his final battle, provide him with an important piece of information as it was in this season. We actually find out that Green Arrow and his crew of superheroes have been attacking 33.1 installations. And Prototype, he's meaning the episode, they provide the information how to penetrate the Prototype's force field. But originally, he was going to come back and help out. And that was going to springboard the spinoff that ultimately just never happened. So, to kind of break down that bit of information, basically at the end of season 6, we would have found out that Oliver Queen and his team of Justice League heroes have been attacking 33.1 installations that LexCorp was, hosting throughout the world, which we did see. And in the finale, there was some kind of Lex prototype they would need to access. Now, if I don't remember correctly, Green Arrow never showed up at the end of the show, at least for the finale. He just provided the information off screen. But originally, he was going to show up, and that was, I guess, going to springboard this Justice League spinoff show, which, honestly, really sucks that never happened. That would have been really, really cool. And to kind of further talk about more of the quotes that he kind of provided, and he kind of discussed the show more. He kind of would say more about it in this. I was supposed to co-create it and run it, so I am doubly sad. We're all really excited about it, me and the other actors. We all got along great, and we really wanted to make this show, and we thought it would be really, really cool. He was actually, Stephen DeKnight was going to be the one to basically be the showrunner. He was going to co-run it, he was going to write it, he was possibly even going to direct some episodes for it. So that all sounds really cool. It seemed like he was the major driving force in why this show, was going to happen. Now, Steven also talked about more of the initial plans and ideas that he had with this Justice League spinoff show from Smallville that he was developing. And it's all, honestly, it's really fascinating stuff. Really a kind of curious thing, he actually wanted to possibly bring Brainiac in as a major villain for this spinoff show. I'm going to kind of talk about the elaborate quote that he mentioned, but here's the quote he said. We had talked about bringing Brainiac back, quite possibly in a different form, played by a different actor. We kicked around some ideas for bringing him back as someone else from the Buffyverse, which would have been a fun nod. We talked about bringing him back as a woman. I wouldn't be surprised at some point between now and the time the show wraps up that Brainiac pops back up. And then he also kind of talked about a master plan for Brainiac and more about the plot for this proposed spinoff in the show. I had a master plan for Brainiac, showing up in the spinoff that I won't tell you what it is, because you never know, a spinoff may happen in the future, and I will use this, but it was awesome. And that kind of ends all the quotes that Steven said about this Justice League spinoff show. So to kind of break down what he said there, basically he had a big plan that he wanted to have Brainiac be involved with this Justice League spinoff series and possibly be maybe the major villain of this entire spinoff, and that he wanted to bring him back as possibly a different actor. So it wouldn't have been the same actor that played him in Smallville. I think his name was James Marsters, the guy that played him in Smallville, which he did a pretty good job, but that they kind of toyed around this idea that he can come back as a different actor, possibly someone from the Buffyverse, which he mentions that because one of his first jobs in the TV industry was working on the Buffy vampire show. So he thought about bringing one of the actors from that show to come back. And of course, toyed with the idea of bringing Brainiac back as a woman, which, all really fascinating stuff. And that's kind of all the quotes that he mentioned. So the kind of basic gist of all this stuff, he wanted to have the Flash, Cyborg, be involved with this version of the Justice League. The leader of it was going to be Oliver Queen, Green Arrow, possibly Aquaman was going to be involved. They were going to go around the world like we saw in the background of the events of Season 6, stop 33.1 installations that involved Lex Luthor, but also, kind of help recruit heroes. Oliver Queen was going to kind of become like a Professor X kind of role. It was going to be his place, his Justice League, his team was going to be kind of a refuge for young and upcoming superheroes. The events of the season 6 finale would tie in directly with the events of the Justice League spinoff series, as Oliver Queen was supposed to participate at the end of the finale, and that would result in the ultimate springboard that would launch the spinoff TV show. And that the possible major villain, or at least there was definite plans for Brainiac to be involved with this Justice League spinoff, possibly as a different actor. And that's all the basic information we know about the story details and plot of this possible spinoff. And, over the years, Stephen and I would talk about this. I think also some of the other actors that did play the Justice League members in the Smallville series also mentioned this Justice League spinoff. So this was definitely a thing that was possibly in the works and happening behind the scenes. But now I'm going to kind of get into why this show was canceled. Now, we don't really know too much information really in terms of specific details on why this Justice League spinoff series never happened. It seemed like a lot of work was put into it. Steven DeKnight was going to be the guy to co-run it, write it, possibly direct some episodes, and he had definitely ideas and plans for what he wanted to do with this series and everything like that. But even the quotes that I already mentioned, it ultimately never happened. It got canceled. Now, we don't know exactly why, but I'm just going to kind of speculate here. It probably never happened due to, I think, number one, the issues going on with DC and Smallville. Now, for whatever reason, DC and Smallville had a weird relationship when they were making the series. For example, famously, the Flash wasn't really called the Flash in the series. He was forced to be called Impulse. Very strange why that was put on, but, really weird. And there was also the whole back and forth revolving around Lois Lane and the fact that, can they use that character or not? And I'm sure Green Arrow was probably a similar situation. So I think that there would have been a lot of issues with DC. They probably would have been not as excited or really skittish in terms of doing their own version of the Justice League and the spinoff series kind of form. I'm not sure if they would have been totally on board with that. Also, to kind of mention some other things that also could have participated in why this series never moved forward on the CW was that, curiously enough, around the same time that Season 6 was airing, or at least, kind of in the ballpark, if you will, there was a canceled Justice League movie that was happening. It was going to be a George Miller directed Justice League film called Justice League Mortal, and it was a big effort made on all the parties involved. They had cast people. There was a fully developed script. It was going to be a kind of big budget movie, and at the time, Warner's was behind that. And I'm sure the Warner's, movie side of things, hearing the, the possible development of a Justice League sort of spin-off show, would have been not happy about that, and probably would have shot down the idea if it moved any, very much forward, which sucks because it's honestly a really good idea. And just in general, the showrunners, the writers behind Smallville probably just didn't want to take the risk. Maybe the CW also just didn't want to make more superhero shows. Not exactly clear, but ultimately it all got canceled very early on in its life cycle. I'm only speculating here on some of the reasons of why it may, like I said, why it may have been canceled. But I think it probably was coming out during a time where, Warner's, the film division, was making a Justice League movie, Justice League Mortal. That probably would have been a big roadblock, and I could see, the Warner's movie side telling the TV side, hey, you can't do this show, all right, just because we're using the characters. And also, number two, I think that just the CW, there just wasn't really an interest in picking up and doing another show revolving around superheroes, and maybe they were just kind of scared that maybe the declining ratings of future seasons of Smallville maybe just would have kind of went away from the idea of doing a Justice League spinoff series. But now for my ultimate thoughts on Steven and Knight's proposed Justice League Smallville show. I gotta be honest here, man. I am really disappointed this never happened. I think the Kid Flash Impulse show and this show would have been awesome to see get off the ground. And it sounds like from all the details I was able to disinter from this thing, it sounds really good. I mean, having Oliver Queen be a leader of a team, that sounds exactly what they were kind of setting up in season 6 of Smallville. Having them go around the world, do cool stuff. And also the fact that, apparently it was going to be set in Metropolis and it would have been kind of an X-Men vibe and a refuge for young and upcoming superheroes. Also, the major side characters, Flash, Cyborg would have been in this, so we would have been given a lot of development and spotlight on them, and Aquaman as well, most likely, and other heroes, and even Brainiac coming back in a new form, whatever that may be in this TV show. Honestly, it kind of really sucks we never got this. I think it would have been really cool. I think it would have been, honestly, just something really fantastic. And like I said before, if you've seen the season 6 Justice episode, it's one of the best episodes of the series. And you can definitely feel that they were, like I said, they may have been hinting towards something with that. And it just, man, it sucks that we never got to see it. I mean, can you imagine, like, Clark Kent crossing over in certain episodes? That would have been awesome. It just really sucks. It really sucks that we never got to see this Smallville Justice League spinoff series. Honestly, out of all these shows, maybe besides the Kid Flash show, this one I'm really disappointed never came to being. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the canceled Steven Knight Smallville Justice League proposed spinoff series. All right, y'all. Hopefully you have a good day, and peace.